Does Hellboy still hold up 20 years later? Let's find out. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back. The Eye of the Storm podcast. Today, we're going to be doing Have You Seen? Daniel, you want to let the people know what the hell that is?
So Have You Seen is our series where we look at a movie that one of us knows well and the others are just seeing for the first time. This week we're talking about Hellboy from 2004, which I've seen many times, and I'm a big fan of the Hellboy mythos in general, but the two of you just saw it for the first time. So what are your impressions?
It was a good story. Like, literally, that's what it was, a good story. Especially when it came to the whole, like, little love triangle thing between Hellboy and, I forgot what the other guy's name was.
Miles.
Miles, yeah. So the kind of love triangle between him, Miles, and the girl, which I forgot her name, that kind of got me more engaged into the story even more. But I think this is probably, of all the Have You Seen movies that we've done, I think Hellboy, in terms of the story, was probably my favorite one so far.
Other than the love triangle, what caught your interest?
In terms of like Hellboy actually being a boy, so it kind of like followed with the main theme, or like one of the themes of the film, like how his immature ways led to pretty much destruction and death. Like, if he didn't leave to go and chase the girl that he wanted to make his girlfriend, what's her name again? The one that
Liz.
Liz. Yes, Liz. If he didn't go spy on Liz, then his dad would still be alive. And the scene where even though it was justified that when he had the interaction with I forgot his name, but it was the bald guy.
That's Tom Manning. He's the straight-laced FBI guy who thinks the monsters just get in the way.
Even when they had the little argument, then he picked up whatever he picked up and threw it through the window. Even though that was a bit justified, still you could still see that he was still kind of like a boy in a man demon's body. So I liked how they kind of just followed that theme throughout, and he's still kind of like, of course there were times where he was matured and he had to make manly decisions, but he was still like a boy, even though he looked like a man demon. So yeah, that was another thing which I liked about the story.
Okay, what about you?
I think I was calling it. I think it's definitely worth a watch. Probably not my favorite thing, I would say, even just like as a whole, as a movie. I don't think it's my favorite thing, to be fair.
Which one was your favorite thing so far? Sorry to interrupt. I'm not trying to drift away from the conversation, but which one?
Aliens, to be fair. Probably Aliens.
Okay, yeah, Alien was good, but I'm talking about as a story. Alien is one of my best, but as a story.
I feel like there's still like some like not holes or gaps or whatever, but I feel like there's like certain parts of it which I wasn't completely invested in, because I know like what I did enjoy about this is that they kind of like take time to like sort of flesh out the characters and this, that, and the other, and really get into sort of understanding them a little bit. But then there's just like certain relationships which probably could have been developed a little bit more. Like when they killed his dad, I didn't really feel the impact of it, because I don't feel like they gave enough or showed enough of like the bond or like connection between them to like really like feel the impact of that. And I don't know, it didn't really like hit me the way that it probably should have, to be fair.
But I think that one is about Hellboy having to grow up, right? Because he's got this immaturity angle to him, and now he's suddenly alone.
Yeah, which
so it's a catalyst more than a payoff,
which I can appreciate. But I think overall, like kind of like the mood of the film, like the settings and stuff like that, was like all great. Really enjoyed it. Bit of a weak villain as well. I didn't really like it for the villain too much in this either. And Hellboy as a character, I actually really did like him as like a protagonist. I'm like really on board with him. So yeah, kind of mixed for me. Just like a good watch, but like not something that I'd like maybe go back and revisit.
So Hellboy is a weird one, right? Because he's a demon who acts like a hard-boiled detective. His friends are a psychic fish person and a depressed pyromaniac. And he fights Nazis and immortal sorcerers. So what was your initial reaction when you started watching it, like in the first scene or two? And how long did it take you until you had a handle on what was going on? Or is that overstated? Was it not that weird?
I would say it was pretty weird, because obviously they have like the whole opening sequence where sort of they're in this like whatever place that they're in, and they're opening up a portal and this and the other, and then I can't really remember how like Hellboy came through, but like he just kind of like appeared there, and he was there to.
The Nazis go to a ley line island in Scotland with the Russian sorcerer Rasputin to open a hell into space to wake up a sleeping god, and then Hellboy comes through by accident.
Yeah,
that's the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Basically, which is a bit like, okay, this is kind of crazy. Not like I would say it probably didn't hit as crazy as it probably did at the time, just because we've had like so many other things that like maybe come afterwards. But it was still like quite like an interesting opening. And then what I actually quite enjoyed as well was like the opening sort of like mission that he does. Again, when they sort of introduce that there is kind of like a more kind of like wider normal sort of aspect of the world, or where sort of you have like this like kind of like psychic fish person that he's like kind of like you said, like that he's friends with, that is just kind of there, and it's like kind of like, well, for the people that are in the know, it's just kind of like normal for them to be there. And obviously like you got Hellboy and his like little lair and this that, and the other, and they have to like kind of like sneak them into sort of into the building through the garbage truck and stuff like that. I thought that was like pretty neat.
Yeah, so the reason I suggested it for the series is like I've been watching this movie on and off for 20 years. I've got all the comics on my shelf. Not the biggest expert on Hellboy, but I've read a bunch of it, and it's one of my top 3 things I want to see adapted properly, like the complete story and stuff like that. So to me, this is kind of not a big shock, right? Because I've seen it so many times. So that's why I was asking, how does it come across to somebody who's seeing it for the first time with no warning, and you just randomly picked up this movie? And I think one thing that really helps it is how down to earth all the characters are. Right, there is no pretension in there. There are no big speeches. Hellboy's whole character is that he's not this epic thing of mythology, but just a guy, right? That's kind of the charm of the character, right? That he's this creature from hell with the destiny to destroy the world, but he's just a guy. Do you think that helped?
No, I think it helps because obviously his upbringing now is on Earth. So it's good that they kind of showed obviously the cultural influence that had on him. Because obviously if he was born wherever he came from, of course he would have seen a different Hellboy. But to kind of like mix the two in terms of like, him being like an actually human man as well as being somewhere out of, from outer space, wherever he came from. It was kind of cool to see.
And it was just like they just gave him like just like simple character motivations in terms of like he's just in love with this girl and he wants to kind of like be with this girl and stuff like that throughout the movie, which people can relate with and people can like resonate with. And again, like that's what I enjoyed a lot about sort of his character itself. Like Jonathan mentioned at the start, it's not like he's like this like brute and like freak of nature or whatever, but the action scenes and stuff like that isn't like going to wow you, isn't going to be like the most spectacular thing, but it's just like how down to earth he is and how like he just like he's just like a regular dude in this sort of world.
Yeah, that's why I was like, when in terms of like coming off what Harvey was saying, like the action scenes aren't really that great because he wasn't as strong as I thought he was gonna be. You know what I'm saying? Which is a bit, I wouldn't say it's misleading or disappointing. It's just that there was a scene when I forgot the main villain, when he said to Hellboy, you don't realize how much power you have within you or something like that, right? So that kind of like helped me be at peace with seeing the not weakness, but just seeing Hellboy as not being as strong as I thought he was going to be, because that scene there told me, okay, so there's more to come from this character. So there's more, we're going to see more from him in terms of him getting powerful, because from this movie, you're not going to be overly impressed with the fight scenes. It's mainly just him with a gun, shooting that gun.
Yeah, I was going to like just piggyback off the top of that and say like he does have like this like big massive gun, but it's just like I don't think I'm like really impressed ever like whenever he's like using it. I think even in the opening when he's like chasing the original monster and he like misses like 5 times before he hits it, I was a bit like, okay, it's a bit crazy. He's got like this, like just do something cool with it.
I do think there's some great fight scenes in this, like in the subway where he fights the Hound of Destruction, and there's like 20 people around because it's in a subway station, and he tries to save the cats while at the same time trying to keep the demon from getting away. There's some cool stuff in there, but yeah, it's his skill set or power set is very basic, right? He's tough, he's strong, but ultimately he punches people, right, and shoots people.
I think the reason why like I wasn't wild enough is because his struggle was real and heavy. It was like there was a lot of it. Like even the scene where Liz had to save him from getting like eaten up by all those monsters. I was like, I get there's a lot of monsters, but it's still like they're not even the main threat. The other guy is the main threat. You know what I'm saying? And these are like his pets. And you're probably getting like if Liz didn't step in, like Liz was only like her scenes were minimal in terms of like we saw the extent of her power, but even though we saw maybe I say 5 minutes in total that we've seen of her power, I could tell she's way stronger than it. Do you know what I'm saying? So it was like that's why I was a bit like, damn, this guy's kind of a weakling. But at the same time, like I said, the scene where the villain, the main guy, said to Hellboy, "Listen, you got so much power within you." That's like I said, I was like, all right, cool. So there's more to come and there's more to see when it comes to Hellboy. But just overall, he was just oddly weak, which I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, but that power within him is a plot device, right? It's not his superpower. Right, he's got the thing about how he's like the herald of the apocalypse, but to do that he has to accept that role, and when that happens, it kind of takes him over.
Is that it? There's nothing else more to him. He's just super strong.
So the thing about Hellboy is that he's strong, he's tough, he can scrap with demons and witches and Nazi cyborgs and whatever else. But he doesn't lift cars, right? He's not Superman. He's not Thor or somebody like that. But he's like, his charm is that he's this down-to-earth guy with this grand destiny he doesn't care about. And then he kind of wanders into these weird situations. Oh. And he's not impressed by anybody. He's not impressed by demons. He's not impressed by prophecy. He's not impressed by immortal sorcerers or whatever. He's just a guy who wants to get the job done. And that is really like, if you're into Hellboy, that's probably the angle that appeals to you. And I think that's really important in a world that's so crazy, right? Like this adaptation already really downplays how weird it is. Like the comics get much weirder, but I think you need that contrast. And if everything was up to 11, including Hellboy, then I think it wouldn't work. It would be too much. But because Hellboy is this subdued and kind of just there, and everything weird happens around him, I think that's what makes it work.
I feel like I would have had the same reaction if I watched it at the time, because obviously, like, we've seen so many like weird movies, like for example Overlord, where they're bringing back Nazi soldiers. So it's like I've seen a lot of weird stuff. That's why like the question that you asked before, where you said the opening scene where, the Nazis and stuff, it wasn't too weird to me because I've already seen some weird stuff, but it was cool. I'm like, oh crap.
Yeah.
See, like
even like the whole opening portals and stuff like that. I feel like we've I feel like we've like seen it in like Doctor Strange and like other like some like similar type of movies, some like the DC movies and stuff like that. So it doesn't. Like in today's age, it doesn't come off maybe as weird as it probably would have back in the days.
But I can, like I said, but I can imagine what the reaction would have been in 2004.
Yeah. That was going to be my next question. How do you think it's aged? Because we are used to bigger and more spectacle, and Hellboy himself kind of looks plastic, right? And Abe as well. All the creature designs are a little bit Disney World, right? But
I didn't have an issue with the design, so I think because actually you've seen the pictures.
It looks great, but it's like not what we're used to now today, right? Yeah. So did that stand out? Did it not matter? Did it hold back?
Like genuinely, like watching it, I was like quite impressed with how it looked for it being 2004. Obviously, like I feel like Hellboy's design kind of in certain like scenes did stick out a little bit to me, but overall, even like down to like the CGI use and stuff like that, I didn't have too much of a problem with it. I thought like it was all fine, like knowing the context that it's like in 2004 and it was like more limited than sort of what we had today. And like I can only imagine how great it would look. I know there's a Hellboy movie in 2019. I don't know how that was received. I don't know whether we're going to do it or not. It wasn't okay, basically. So I don't think we're going to do that one. I don't think I'm going to watch it. But yeah, I didn't really see too many issues. I think they did a really good job with what they had to work with back in the day.
The images that came out of the new Hellboy that's coming soon, it looks worse than the Hellboy in 2004. So they did a really good job with just like everything in terms of like the whole aesthetic and just, like you said, the CGI and just, the way that the look of Hellboy. Like looking at him stand next to people, especially seeing him trying to get Liz going up against
Rasputin.
Yeah. Seeing him, I felt sorry and uncomfortable for him because I'm like, Liz is human and the other guy's human and you're not really human. You look kind of like a big red devil, so I shouldn't really feel sorry for you because you're a devil, but at the same time, you're not really a devil and you just look very scary, but you don't mean to be scary. You're just a down to earth type of guy. So, his like just the aesthetic, the look of Hellboy looks really cool and unsettling. And it just makes you feel like, it just feels like my feelings felt very contradicted because he looks very unsettling, but at the same time, he just gives off a cool, down to earth human guy, which was so weird.
Did that change when he made his transformation at the end? When he was controlled by Rasputin and he accepted his destiny and for a brief moment he turned into his full form. Did that change then? I mean, he's clearly not the same person at that point.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But did that surprise you, or did it Like he didn't know that was coming, right?
No, well, no. We did see the prophecy.
I think they show him
Yeah,
with a crown of flames in
yeah.
a vision right now. Okay.
So when I saw that, I wasn't surprised. I was just like, okay, like they're bound to do something with the horns because the way, like, you know, it was ripped off. So like they were like bound to do something with the horns. So that kind of told me like, okay, I thought his true power were gonna come from the horns. So when I saw the horns in the prophecy, I was like, okay, this is more interesting. So that's why when you said the whole thing about his true power is just him pretty much being the key, I was like, oh, that's anticlimactic. Because I thought, you know, his horns were gonna trigger some sort of power, right? But it's just the guy's just the key. So now realizing that he's just the key, the horns doesn't really do nothing besides just tell me like, okay, this guy is actually he's pretty much a devil. Like he just looks like a devil.
But it all hangs together, right? Like the horns are symbolic of him rejecting his nature as a demon, as a devil, right? So that's why he fights him down in order to appear more human, which is a great joke. Like, don't stare at the horns. He doesn't like it when you stare at the horns. And then when he embraces his destiny, that's when the horns grow back. And then when he rejects his destiny, he breaks them off again, right? So I think this is a very effective symbolism. Like based on where his horns are at, you can tell where he's at as a character, but in a way that's not contrived or silly or cheap.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
I've just seen the Hellboy from the Crooked Man, pictures of him. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I actually think it looks fine. He's just too pale. If they color correct him, which there's still time for, then I think he looks okay.
The image that I'm looking at just looks weird. I don't know. It looks so weird. Maybe it's like all like the picture that I picked, but yeah.
Like we're not talking about the Crooked Man, right? And at this time, only the trailer has I think the second trailer was released like 2 weeks ago or something. And one thing that's really that trailer really gets wrong is that it's supposed to be a really like Hellboy is supposed to be in contrast to the world he's in, right? If the world is really fantastic, he's supposed to be mundane, and if the world is kind of bleak and gray, then he's supposed to be colorful, right? And in this, he's just kind of as gray as everything else. And I think the 2004 movie does that much better, where he's, depending on the situation, he either stands out or fades into the background, depending on what the scene needs. But it's always supported by his character.
How did you guys feel about the theme of immaturity? Because actually, like fulfilling like Hellboy, like how did you feel like that was executed in this film?
It's very central to the movie, right? Like the entire thing is about Hellboy not growing up or having to grow up or having to take responsibility for his actions, having to confront his nature and having to make a choice and having to make the mature decision that goes beyond just what he wants, but rather what other people around him need and what the world needs. So I think it's really central, and I think this movie really has stood up as well as it has, despite some of the effects being a bit dated, like the battle at the end against the Chaos God is like a PS3 cutscene, right? Like I think it looks cool, but it's clearly a 20-year-old CGI sequence. But I think what makes the movie hang together is the character, right? That all of these characters are very strongly characterized, and you know what their deal is, and you know what their conflicts are, and you know what choice they're making and why. And at that point, it almost doesn't matter how it looks, because we care about these people. If you're on board at all with these characters, then you're with them in their journey until the end.
Yeah, no, I agree. But to be fair, you know, with his purpose, he just kind of like found out about his purpose, though. So could we really say that was him being immature? Or could you argue that, okay, that's just him kind of like, he just found out about something, so he kind of has to kind of like, you know, it has to take time for him to kind of settle in with the truth and make a decision, because he didn't really have time to actually think about it and make a decision. So can we really say that was just him being immature about the way that he handled it? Or you could say that was like a genuine human reaction, an adult reaction, because most adults they'll kind of like deal with it the way that he dealt with it.
No, but I think his immaturity is a character trait that he has in the beginning and then overcomes over the course of the story. And he also has these constant things about the world that rejects him. He has to hide from the world. And Manning constantly tells him that he's a monster. And Manning has this speech about when you've killed all the monsters, there's still one left, right? That sort of thing. And he's constantly he constantly has this idea reinforced that he doesn't belong, right? that the only one who was really family was Professor Broom, and he dies halfway through the movie. And everybody else is a colleague or a friend, but not family, right? And then somebody comes along and offers him ultimate power and purpose and belonging. And for a second, he's tempted. But then he has to do the right thing and reject it. So the whole thing about the destiny and Rasputin's bargain, I think, is not really, it comes in at the end, but it's the culmination of this character arc of, will he do what's right even though nobody will thank him for it? Right? So I think it works based on that.
Okay. How did you guys feel about the last act? So, because the scene, it felt a bit, for me personally, like when Liz came back from the dead, it kind of felt a bit rushed. Not rushed, but it didn't really feel fully fleshed out, because it was a bit strange how she died. Because the guy, the villain technically took her soul. So then when he died, I was like, okay, maybe the way that she came back was because he died and then her soul went back into her body, but that was kind of like rushed out. But just in general, sorry, that was just one of my, grievances with the film. But how did you guys feel about the final act?
So I adore this movie, right? But I think the end is a little bit hand wavy, where it's just the power of friendship, right? Where basically Maya's kind of just appeals to Hellboy's humanity, which is a gamble when you're talking to a literal devil. But
and then when he gave him the cross as well, I was like, wait, that was a bit crazy.
Well, that was again reinforcing this difference between who Hellboy is as a person and what his nature is, right? Because the cross hurts him because he's a devil, but it reminds him of his family.
So is he actually a devil? Is he actually a devil, or is he just a demon?
His destiny is to lead the legions of hell when the apocalypse comes. That's his deal. He's literally from hell, and he's not the devil, but he's like a demon prince, whatever.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, because I remember when what's his name? Is his name Abbey, the villain?
Rasputin.
Oh yeah, Rasputin. When he said, because there was a scene where he says he was referring to God, he says, your God doesn't do nothing, but our God gives us this or something like that. So I was like, okay, so Hellboy isn't the devil then. Because I thought he was the devil. But
he's not the devil, he is a powerful devil from hell.
So what port did it open to the so when they opened the portal, what was it opening?
It was opening, so this is kind of where Hellboy kind of gets a little bit weird, because Hellboy is this really weird mix of folklore, cosmic horror, pulp stuff with like Nazi cyborgs in Antarctica, that sort of thing, and just mythology. And it's a world in which all mythologies are real, right?
Yeah.
So Hellboy is from the Christian hell, but the god that Rasputin worships is a chaos god that sleeps in space, and that will one day return, and when it returns, the world ends. So in order to do that, Rasputin needs the power of Hellboy, basically. And so he worships Oktru Jahad, this chaos god, but he's kind of recruiting like a foot soldier of the Christian devil as part of his plan.
Okay.
Right? And that's what he means when he says, your God doesn't do anything, but my God does, right? Because he's talking about the Christian God who is not intervening in the story. But his God is a literal space alien, like psychic space alien that sleeps in space, and when you bring it into the world, it will devour the world.
Okay.
Right? So that's basically what was going on there.
I see. One more question. How do you guys feel about movies not showing the full extent of the threat? So what I mean by that is obviously Hellboy not opening Pandora's box pretty much, right? Because a lot of movies see that, even in like freaking Justice League, where I forgot what the villain was, but that villain, even in the Snyder Cut, we didn't even really see, the villain at the end, I forgot what his name was. I don't remember. Darkseid. We didn't even fully see him. Like in many movies, we never see the main villain actually just come into scene and do madness. I think the only time we've seen a villain's full threat coming into play was Thanos in Avengers, and look how successful that turned out. Do you think movies, because I was disappointed when I never saw Hellboy open Pandora's box. I'm going to say Pandora's box, I don't know the official term for what the hell he was trying to open. Well, you're trying to open a gateway to hell.
It was the seal to hell.
The seal to hell. Yeah. So how do you feel like when movies never showed that. They never like I said, Avengers was the only one that did it, right? They were the only ones that did it, and look how successful that turned out. So you feel like they've never done that in Hellboy
Yeah.
and other
And I,
movies as well.
I don't think it's the only one that's done it, but I like what I would say, because like they did it in the Ghostbusters movie.
In terms of successful, in terms of it being successful,
Oh.
'cause I can't remember any other film that's been successful that's actually shown it, like the full extent of a villain's power coming into play.
Yeah.
And they did it in Black Adam for like 2 minutes, but it turned out being horrible.
It was just a boss fight.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was
not
terrible.
terribly interesting.
Yeah, but then that's the issue, is that like they've done it in like several movies, like the Ghostbusters movie. I think they did like Suicide Squad movie and stuff like that, where they insert the final like big bad into like the last part of the movie, where you haven't really spent too much time, sort of like you haven't spent enough time with that character to really care about it, and then they just kind of like lose immediately, and it's just a bit like, okay, this was just like the obligatory CGI fight at the end to like have like that big final like action at the, to close it off. Whereas I feel like, especially like in this movie where they kind of like touch a little bit more on his like inner conflict and like the character motivations and stuff like that, it kind of fits a little bit better, as opposed to having like this like space god sort of come in and then him having to like defeat it. To be honest, like I do understand, like I do like a good like powerful villain. I do like sort of kind of like seeing them kind of like F shit up a little bit, but it doesn't always make sense, and sometimes it's a little bit jarring where it's just a bit like, okay, here's like the final ultimate threat, and then they get taken out in the most lamest way possible.
I think it really depends on the story, right? Like, it depends on what the story is about. In the case of Justice League, there was supposed to be, I think, a Darkseid movie or another Justice League movie which they fight Darkseid, and this was kind of the vanguard, right? The first wave. And then that movie didn't happen, but if it had happened, I think it was supposed to play out a lot like Thanos, where he gets built up over a long time. We see his henchmen and his generals, and then in the end, he finally shows up himself. I think that was the plan originally. But I think this movie is not about that. This movie is about what decision will Hellboy make, right? Will he choose humanity, even though humanity has rejected him many times over and has not thanked him, even though he's been fighting their enemies for 50 years, right? So that is like that decision, I think, is the core of the movie. And like Hervé said, I don't think the fight against the old god at the end adds very much to the story. Like, it's a CGI fight, and Hellboy gets to be awesome for a few minutes, but the actual story is over when he rejects Rasputin's offer. And I think like the threat of it happening, like we don't need to see him open a gate to hell. Just the fact that he could if he made the right or the wrong choice. That itself is the story, right? We don't have to see it actually happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I take it you broadly enjoyed this one, even if it wasn't your favorite. Is that a fair summary?
No, for me, I enjoyed it. It was fun. Like I said, in terms of story, it's probably the best that I've seen, because it grabbed my attention even more. In terms of like, out of every first time have you seen movies that I've watched, Alien 2 would probably be number one, just in terms of like, as a whole, right? Because that's just my type of favorite. That's my type of movie. Just dystopian, post-apocalyptic. That's just for me, right? And then Hellboy goes second. But in terms of story, just like if I'm just talking about specific things, what got me the most engaged, I'd say Hellboy is number one. So I enjoyed it, for me personally.
Yeah, I think I enjoyed it enough to watch Hellboy 2. I believe that there's a second one. Yeah. Like I enjoyed it enough to sort of watch the second one. It wasn't like a terrible movie like that. I was just like, it's good, but I didn't like have any like overwhelming feelings about the movie.
I think it's just a fun movie. Like, I understand why it's not like mentioned with the other greats, but at the same time, it's still a good movie. Like, it's a solid, good, fun movie. Like, if I was to go and see this back in 2004, I'd probably say it's up there, one of the greatest back in the day. But in terms of
if it's the time period in terms of like what was coming out at the time, you know, like the X-Men movies, Spider-Man movies and stuff like that, I don't think it's like too much sort of like, I don't think it's like a significant step below any of that, to be fair. I think it's like could be even on par with like a lot of those movies.
I think it's really strong on character, and that is something that I think a lot of these movies often fall down on, where it doesn't quite make sense, or the characters' personalities and journeys are not a kind of more a vehicle towards making a plot happen. And here, it's all about internal conflicts, right? Hellboy has to decide whether he wants to embrace his destiny. Liz wants to kind of be at peace with herself, right? Because if she's not, people start dying. Abe is like, he knows everything except himself, right? He has no idea where he comes from. He doesn't belong anywhere, that sort of thing. Like, they all have a thing going on that is really well articulated, and that the interactions between those things are what make the plot happen, and I think that helps it. I don't think this is a masterpiece. I don't think this is one of the greatest movies ever made, but it's just a really solid movie, and it's really strong on just character. And it actually, this is one of those few cases where these characters are not exactly like in the comics. Especially Liz. Liz is very different in the comics, and she's got a really cool story going on there as well. But here she's the girlfriend, right, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But I think all the changes they made here kind of are in service of this very, very specific story that's being told here. And you kind of preempted my follow-up question, which is, did this make you want to watch the next one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go for a second Hellboy movie.
What about the one coming up, The Crooked Man? Does it make you more interested in that one? Does it?
I feel like it piques my interest in terms of like kind of like the mythology of it, and I feel like there's been proof of concept since the original sort of 2004 movie where there's enough evidence to show that you can get a little bit more weird in terms of sort of what you introduce to the audience, and we're like a little bit more accepting of different things. So I'm curious to see what direction they go with that movie.
Ironically, the Crooked Man is actually one of the more grounded stories. Like Hellboy goes to Appalachia and he finds some witches. That's kind of it. Right? There's no space gods, there's no prophecy, there's not like it's one of the it's basically like there's a main story of Hellboy, and then there's like side stories which are basically episodic. And in the side stories, he basically stumbles into a situation and deals with a monster or with some kind of weird magic or something in this typical Hellboy way. And the one they picked is one of the more grounded ones, right? So of all the 4 Hellboy movies that will exist, so the 2 in this continuity, then the one from 2019, and then this one, the new one, they scaled it down a lot and made it a lot more grounded and a lot more folklore centric as opposed to weird pulp sci-fi mystery stuff. But yeah, I'm still hoping for somebody to just do Hellboy straight up, because this is a very specific version of the character, which I like a lot, but it's not the definitive version, right? There's room for other takes. So I'm really looking forward to Crooked Man, see if they do that. Like the first 2 trailers were not great, but the second one was a lot better than the first. And it's got potential, so we'll see.
When does it come out?
September, I think, next month.
Okay, cool. So I'm guessing, it's on the schedule for us then.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely. It's one of those movies that I hope work out. Right, that's kind of that's where my scale in anticipation tops out. Right, I'm not excited for movies anymore, but I hope they work out. That's like the highest score, and Hellboy Crooked Man has that. All right, any last words?
Bring on the new Hellboy, even though I'm Christian. I guess we've come to an end. Guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Hervé?
Yeah, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And of course, put your thoughts down below on what you thought about the original Hellboy movie, and are you excited for the upcoming one as well?
Also, if there's any like hidden gems or films that you think that we should have seen, or pretty much legendary movies that you think we haven't seen that you want us to watch, comment down below also. Who knows, if we all come into unison and agree that this synopsis of this movie looks pretty great and the trailer looks pretty great, we might go ahead and review it too. Watch it and review it too. But all right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in today, and we will catch you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.